Okay, my name's Zakashi, guys, and in this video here, it's a video you definitely wanted to see. We've got an ultra Turles tier list. This is going to be an early tier list, very early tier list. We'll probably do another one in the upcoming week because things are probably due to change. But people keep asking me, where's Turles on the tier list? Where's Turles on the tier list? What's the tier list looking like? Now, I do want to say with this tier list here, there's going to be a lot of changes, a lot of things that you might not be used to seeing. And obviously, I can only ask that you hear out my explanation, but if you have any disagreements or things that you want to discuss, definitely leave a genuine comment down below because I will be checking. I do check all the comments eventually. At the end of the video, I will also do an evaluation of the whole tier list. So if you have any questions about certain placements, I will consider every single place after I've done the whole tier list and explain my reason, because my opinion can change once I see the tier list itself. In hindsight, it's always easier to give a comment on something that you see that you didn't make once you just see the finished product. So I do that for my own tier list as well. That's all I pretty much got to say. Let's get into this. Gotta shout out my boy Dingy, DNGEE. If you guys want to make your own tier list and you want the link for how I'm making the tier list, go ahead and follow the boy here on Twitter. The link is right there. You can see the short URL. Press that and you'll be able to make your own tier list. I wouldn't be able to do this and you wouldn't be able to watch this without the boy there, so I gotta give him his respects. Now let's actually get into this. Alright, so we're getting into the tier list now. We have the fan service tier and the honorable mentions tier. I'm not going to speak too much on these right now, but I'll speak more on them in the evaluation section. But the fan service tier is just characters that are pretty much glazed a lot and they're not maybe as good as they appear. It also doesn't mean they're not usable, but they're not something I would have in my honorable mentions. Honorable mentions are things that I could see in somebody else's tier list and I'd be like, that's not too bad if they made the top 10. I wouldn't disagree with it, but they're personally not going to make my top 10. But the fan service tier, those guys aren't making it anywhere near my top 10, but it also doesn't mean they're necessarily bad. For example, Fuse and Gogeta Blue, you could use them, lots of people do use them and they do get good results. Also, we have Beast Gohan back on the boost. People might bring him out, and I know people like to 5 times Zenkai buff Ultra Vegeta or Blue. But the honorable mentions, these guys, I'd say with the exception of Bardock and Goku, because I only used them on the last 2 days because I only have a Fusion Warrior team and I needed an indestructible unit because I don't have Omega, so I've been using him making the Team Son family. It's been decent, but the rest of these guys have their own reasons for why they're super good, but I won't elaborate on them right now. I just don't think they would make my top 10 based on who I have, so that's just for you guys to overall just, you know, have a good image of what these are looking like. But yeah, let's get into the actual top 10 now. Okay, so we're starting the tier list at number 9 and 10, and I have an interchangeable. I have Super Baby 2 and Garlic Jr. Now, either of these options are very good options, and you're going to find this tier list is super tight, as in there's going to be so many micromanagements to make my list as I would like it, as perfect as it is in my opinion. So I am easily expecting a lot of people to disagree with certain things, while some people might agree with certain things. I think generally just listen to the reasons. You might disagree or agree. Anyways, we have Super Baby 2. I'm going to start with him first. I would take him just quite a bit more than Garlic Jr. And the only reason I would is because he's yellow going up against so many purples that we will see in this tier list. There's a lot of purples. Super Baby 2, you know how he works. Gauge Araga, Super Gauge 2, whatever you want to call him. He revolves around his gauge and combo breaking. If his gauge fills, he can empty it for a blue card. He hits his ultimate art and he's going to lock you in. And that ultimate art, tell you, it will one-shot a lot of people, so he's not to be taken lightly. He also supports his team, giving them anti-Saiyan effects where they can actually damage Saiyans more. So he's not just a defender, he can do offensive damage, and he's also going to break your combos and then support the team. He pretty much does everything you need him to do. He was a unit that a lot of people skipped because at the time he was right before the anniversary, so he's not a unit that you would see a lot. If he released maybe slightly earlier, you would see more of him around in PvP, but because of the timing of his release, more people just don't have him. But overall, if you do run into a baby, this guy's going to be a big reason why maybe your purple unit is getting shredded, you know. If not, he's going to be tanking. Similar to Ultra Broly, like similar to breaking combos, but I would just say the offensive power here and the supportive power gives him that slight edge plus his element. Not much more to say about Super Baby 2. So now I'm going to go into Garlic Jr. now. Garlic Jr., I would outright say he could damn easily be the most tankiest unit in the game. And that's not even a stretch. But I think the biggest thing about him is that he's able to heal a lot on top of that. The healing plus tankiness combination in these new powerful opponents is actually super deadly. It's one of the most annoying things I hate coming up against. This guy heals at, I think, at the end of every combo when you press a certain amount of cards. I think it's up to like 7 cards, which is super good. And then on top of that, they slapped him endurance post transformation. So if you don't manage to kill him pre-transform, which is very unlikely in the first place because almost everybody transforms unless you're just going for rushes, you know, and even then it's a 3v3 game, so he's gonna get that transform off most likely. Garlic Jr. is going to be Brick Wall Hall of Fame. Now, after I've just glazed him all the way to say that he's pretty much the most defensive unit in the game, why is he not higher on the tier list? Well, simply, being tanky isn't everything in his game, and that's his main thing that he supplies to his team. Powerful opponents. He can also fit on movies too. So, ultimately, he's just not as valuable as the other candidates you might see on this tier list. But for if you did want to use him, he could contend as well as the other units on this tier list. He just fits a different position and doesn't offer as much. But for what he's good at, he specializes. It's like, you know, what's the thing? You can be good at many things, or you can be a master of one. And he's a master of defenses, I'll tell you that. But that's pretty much it for Super Baby 2 and Garlic Jr. I don't think I need to go into more about them. People know they're good units, but their position, would they be higher? Not on my list, but if they were like 8, maybe 8, maybe 7 at max, I wouldn't think it's ridiculous, but I'm not going to for my list. I just think 9 and 8, 10 is good for what you're going to see upcoming next. Alright, so next up, we've got the number 8 spot, and I know some people's hearts are immediately broken, immediately seeing Fusing Super Vegito at number 8. That is insane. I know it's insane, because Vegito is my favorite fusion, and that hurts. However, what I will say before I get into this, he could be anywhere from 8, 7, 6, and 5, and I wouldn't complain. But I need to explain why I'm going to have him at 8, and I might evaluate later and maybe move him up. So, Vegito's whole thing and saving grace, to the point where he's even survived while Fusing Gogeta Blue is basically on the downfall, is because of his Rising Rush. If he didn't have the Rising Rush that carries so many people, it's a guaranteed win, he would not even be in the talks. I don't think he's a bad unit at all outside of his rush. I actually think he's a good unit. For example, one thing that I really pride in him is that his draw speed is really high. And because of his draw speed, he's able to get his Vanish back. So I'm sure a lot of you guys have been in the scenario where you're fighting G4 with Vegito, and Vegito get the counter activates with G4. But then even if you don't have a Vanish, Vegito will get his Vanish back because of the cards. He gets 10% every single card he draws. And then he also restores his gauge naturally, which makes his gauge faster than everybody. That's a good situation to get out of when you're fighting G4. He also just does quite a bit of damage, you know. He gets his Dragon Ball super fast, and he has a way faster Synchro in comparison to GB, which is the only other fusing unit. But there are a couple things that you could take out of him. For example, the biggest thing in my opinion is the team factor. I think Fusing Super Vegito's only saving grace is that he's partnered up with Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, if not the best unit in the game, right? If G4 is not the best unit in the game. If he did not have G4 to be on his team, Vegito might not even be in this list at this current moment. And I think Fusion Warriors being a usable team keeps him alive. Now you might be wondering, wait, that's not true because he can be used on Majin Buu Saga. Yes, but Majin Buu Saga prides itself in survivability. We have Ultimate Gohan, who has the endurance which can't be cancelled because he cancels buffs. Other than that, you got Evil Majin Buu, who also cancels buffs, who's basically a perfect partner. Especially in Proud Battle, Majin Buu Saga is super strict. Then on top of that, people have started using Kid Buu. So you're basically running a team with 2 endurances, 2 buff cancellations, which basically allows you to survive rising rushes. Even though Vegito nullifies endurance, that buff will get cancelled if 2 out of 3 units are on that team because Kid Buu doesn't cancel buffs. So people would just opt in to use that instead. You could also just opt in of using Omega Shenron on Majin Buu Saga, who has Indestructible, which damn near just stops Vegito in his tracks. And let's not talk about all the other survivabilities that's just entered the game. We've got Turles, literally comeback king, Golden Frieza making comeback to a degree. So ultimately, Vegito, his Rising Rush, even though it does take out somebody's life, or at least the endurance, the comeback, the indestructible, at least it does something. it's not going to give you a direct win as it would back before. So it's not enough to take him out the top 10, but it's also not enough to say that he's a top 3 unit like he was right before. So I think automatically he should definitely drop some ranks, but it doesn't change the fact that he still probably has the most broken mechanic in the game and will get you wins easily. Like I said, this tier list is going to be very tight, but I can't ignore the survivability factor in this game. It's the ultimate way of playing the game, the best strategy. Meta is about strategy, and Vegito being a one-man army is not a strategy that's going up against 6 live teams. It's just not realistic. No matter how much you love this unit, coping is not going to help you, but he is super good. More than anybody, he's my most used unit for sure. So yeah, I've kept him at 8. But again, I might evaluate and move him up later. Alright, so we have the numbers 6 and 7 options. These are 2 options good for survivability while also doing damage at the same time. We've got Legends Limited Omega Shenron, and we've also got Kid Buu, the Zenkai that's taken the game by storm. I think he's the only Zenkai in the list at the moment. Corrupt Zamasu has made his way out, unfortunately, with Fusion Warriors basically getting slightly worse and worse going forward, plus being replaced by Omega Shenron, who's also a Fusion Warrior. So out of these 2, I think they could be interchangeable, but I'm going to say Omega Shenron is slightly better because I'm micromanaging. But they could easily be interchangeable in my opinion. But I'm going to go Omega Shenron's better. I'm going to explain Omega Shenron first. So we have Omega Shenron here. Green unit, GT unit, powerful opponent unit. I think he's regen 2. Pretty much fits on every good team right now in the game, right? Even though he's green, he's damn near colorless, you know, because he's almost type neutral in every instance. You know, he can go type neutral overall, so he's doing more damage. Then he can also go type neutral against damage sustained, which means that even though there's a lot of purples in the game right now, he's going to be able to absorb a lot of damage. This guy here can do a lot of damage as well, so don't sleep on that. Even post indestructible, he does more damage. I believe he gets 20% damage inflicted. But one thing we need to talk about, which I just mentioned, is the indestructible. The indestructible is a layer you can't just bypass. You have to attack him. You have to attack him. You have to, and end that combo. It's really, really important to get out early game. A lot of people have been trying to go around it and kill the other people, but even if you do a rush or something, he's going to lower sub counts by 5 and basically come his way back in. And that's really annoying to deal with. So you just have to force your way through him. And that's annoying. Whatever team he's on with powerful opponents, you're going to have to do that. If he's on GT, you're going to have to do that. If he's on Fusion Warriors, you're going to have to do that. And that's why a lot of people have started using him. He's actually one of the reasons that people have stopped using Fusing Gogeta Blue, especially in the higher ranks, because it's just better to have an indestructible unit over a unit that's going to do damage, that's potentially mediocre, not adding anything to the team, when there's already, Fusing Super Vegito and Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta on that exact same team. GT needed that protection because who's the only option on GT besides him? We got Super Baby 2, who's obviously not better than Omega Shenron. Then other than that is Bomku, who doesn't even get key on entry. That's poor, man. So obviously Omega Shenron's going to be a good option. Nonetheless, I think most of the things in his kit are self-explanatory. I think he also has 2 ultimates. He can feint you. Just little bits here and there that make him that guy. So don't sleep on him overall. I will say I don't really like his long range ultimate, but in some cases it will catch you and it's really annoying to deal with. So overall, Omega Shenron's super valuable. We were going to respect that. Could be high on the list as well. He's one of those guys that is in like this bunch of like 8, 6, 7, 5, 4. Very tight, but I'm going to leave him at 6 for now and maybe evaluate him later. On the side of him, we've got Zenkai Kid Buu. Now, Kid Buu, he's got some pretty good team options, and I think one thing that's really valuable for him is that he's taking the main spot as the blue on Majin Buu Saga. That's really what's maintained his value more than anything else. I think on powerful opponents, because Turles has released, Turles is very valuable. Kid Buu doesn't need to be used as a blue on powerful opponents. There's no reason to have him when his endurance can be broken through, especially fighting against Vegito. He's actually the liability because he's not going to be cancelling buffs. So you can just rush him and potentially take somebody else out. But on Majin Buu Saga, and I don't want to talk about Proud Battle too much, but if Proud Battle, he's going to be super effective. But on Majin Buu Saga, he's just the best option to have. Because you already have Ultimate Gohan, who has endurance there, which can't be cancelled. If you run him with Evil Majin Buu, then you have 2 units that cancel buffs. So even though he has endurance that can be cancelled, he's got 2 units to protect him if he does get switched into, if a rush occurs from Vegito or anybody else that cancels buffs. It's just super useful overall. You can also pair him with Omega Shenron, so you can then turn Majin Buu Saga basically into powerful opponents with Ultimate Gohan. But then again, like I mentioned, with powerful opponents, he pretty much gets replaced by Turles. So how you want to think about it, he's a good blue that has a good place on a different team where Turles doesn't exist. But on the Turles team, which is powerful opponent, he doesn't shine as much. If you want to use this guy on regen as well, then he can be useful. But people just don't opt in for regen. It's not that it's not a good team, because it definitely is. A lot of these guys are regeneration. It's just that Margin Boost Saga is definitely where he sits the highest. And he's also the reason Vegito is decreasing in value. Having that endurance, even though it can be broken through, is definitely more value of just having a unit that can get rushed and taken out in one shot. Vegito's Rising Rush, I value it more than anything in this game, but survivability is the name of the game right now. And if you're having a team with already two extra lives, so you've got 5 lives, right? You got an extra comeback, an extra indestructible. Why not just add a 3rd extra life, you know, with the endurance with Kid Buu? It's just the best thing you could have, you know, to protect yourself. So that's why I have them at 6 and 7. Very good survivability options. I really hate survivability. It's not my type of playstyle, but I have to respect it. Next up, we got Golden Frieza. And this is one I know a lot of people will hate to see. I'm not even an LoE fan. If there's no LoE haters on Earth, it means I've been killed, because I'm ready to hate on LoE at every single opening. But Golden Frieza, with the release of Turles, highlights the devs making comeback a separate thing to revival. If we look at G4 on release basically killed off revival units, because G4 is a one-shot machine. Everybody knows that. So if G4 one-shots you with an ultimate and you have revival, you're reviving with what, 70% less health? That's absurd. That's absolutely absurd. But you know, the devs decide to go, actually, even though it's the exact same thing as revival, we're gonna name it comeback, and by technicality, that won't work against that unit. So Turles and Golden Frieza are just immune to the effects of revival disruption, because of the technicality of it being quote-unquote different. You know, it's a very small difference, but it makes a big difference. On top of that, the main thing is that Golden Frieza punishes you for punishing him. So if you take him out and then his comeback activates, he's gonna hurt you, and his comeback does a world of damage. Now, something I should have spoke about earlier, he's a pretty good element being purple. A lot of the best units in the game are also purple. Outside of that, he's on pretty much good teams. He's on powerful opponents, sagas from the movies, so he's got pretty much elite teammates, you know. If we look at powerful opponents, we've already got Omega, Kid Buu, Baby, Garlic Jr., Turles is also there. You know, it's just high value in general on powerful opponents. And then if we look at sagas from the movies, we've got Golden Frieza himself, Turles, the new Goku. So obviously he's being used with all of the new units. Even right now, the superhero units on boost, for you glazers that were upset early in the year that I wasn't having Beast Gohan. You know, Beast Gohan's back on the boost, who cancels buffs. That's super useful. That's super useful if you want to force him back into the game. You know, he's not top 10 or anything, but Beast, people love using him. So he's got pretty good teammates, if we're being honest. And then the one thing I really praise him for, he's one of the easiest units to use in the game. So without you knowing, he's increasing the costs of the enemy's cards. So that's just happening for you just switching into him. So then they can't do long combos if they press a card. Then on top of that, he has probably one of the best green cards in the game. It would be ultimately the best green card in the game if it was explosive. I like to say it's the trifecta, but it does even more than that. He spawns cards from his green cards. He restores his vanish. He gets cover no. He gets key, you know. It's pretty much everything. I think it increases his damage as well. It's pretty much everything you could ask for in one green card, and all he has to do is press it mid combo, and it gets better as more people die on his team. If he's last stand, it's going to restore damn near 80% of his vanish gauge. I think it's 70%, but even then, that's still a high enough number to provide him 3v1s plus his comeback in addition. So overall, with him being paired with Turles, who's also a comeback unit, he's going to mesh super well. Having 2 comebacks is greedy. Pretty much any team he's on is going to have damn near 6 or 5 lives. And he's one of the reasons for that. So that's why he's at number 5. Super useful unit. Easy to Zenkai buff too. Fits well with his teammates. No real complaints, I'm not going to lie. So that's why he's at number 5. At number 4, we've got Triku, the anti-G4 machine. This guy serves one purpose, and that's to literally stop G4. And ultimately, if you're stopping the best unit in the game, you're gonna make a top 10 list. If your sole job, and you're good at that job, is to stop the best unit in the game, you are going to have the unit in the top 10. Where in the top 10 is debatable, but the unit's going to make the top 10. Now, this guy overall, I wouldn't say he serves general purpose, but with good teammates, which he does have. In fact, he has the best teammates in the game at this current moment. Most of them, all of them actually, are in the top 10, and in the top 5 at that, I would say. Pretty much, he's protected. He is a liability on defense, even though he has super defense. In terms of his other teammates, so if I'm running him, or if anybody's running him, you're going to run him with probably 2 survivability units. You're going to run him with probably Golden Freezer. You're going to run him with Turles, you know. You're going to run him with, maybe, if you're down there, God Goku, just with having endurance. Even God Goku has endurance. This guy doesn't have anything to protect him past his first life, but in the scenario G4 is an opponent you're going up against, he serves the most purpose. Now, obviously, what he does is, if no switching is applied, and bear in mind, G4 is not the only unit to do this that has no switching, but G4 does it very, very well. He does it with his green card, and he does it with his counter. If no switching is applied, he's going to immediately take all your key, he's going to seal your main, and seal your rising rush. So you're not going to be able to do any attacks like you would with G4. Your combo basically immediately stops immediately. This guy also can tank, but in comparison to his teammates, he doesn't have that survivability factor. He heals a lot as well. And on top of that, while there's basically most of the game right now that's super good is purple, he is yellow. So he's advantageous over pretty much all the characters that you would use every single game. There's going to be almost one character every single game that's purple, and this guy is going to be doing that job. And in most cases, probably 7 out of 10 games is going to be G4. So while G4 being the most used unit in the game right now, why would you not want to counter him if you could afford to? It just doesn't make sense to go anywhere around it. He's going to be on the best team with the best units, such as Turles on survivability sagas from the movies. Survivability from the movies. Flipping hell. So really and truly, I think he can easily make the top 5 standing. But however, if movies falls off, this guy will see a decline. Let's also talk about the guys that might be making use of unorthodox teams. I know a lot of people are a very big fan of Son Family, right? So let's say you want to use fusing Super Vegito. I know a lot of people like to say, oh, can Ultra Gohan be a good counter for Turles? People have Ultra Gohan, so they would use him. Triku can be used with those units in tandem to stop G4. If your intention is to stop the best unit in the game, it gives you a high amount of value, no matter where you are. People even leader slotting him. So I think that's the main thing why I've got him so high. Before, I didn't really think he was that much of a threat because he didn't have many teammates. You can just rush him and get him out of there, right? But if G4 can't make use of his ultimate, with the buff cancellation as well, which I did not mention, he can't make use of his counter, taking priority easy because he has no key sealing rising rushes. You know, G4 loses quite a bit of value because of that, while this guy is a main reason to stopping that unit. And he's boosted, you know. Off boost, I don't think he's going to last, though. But that's just my take on this guy here. We'll evaluate at the end of the list. But I think undoubtedly he has the best teammates in the game. So he's going to make a high spot. It's similar to... a lot of you guys will remember Beast Gohan, Future Gohan, and Pan. Future Gohan is not Beast Gohan level or even support level of Pan. But with Future Gohan having the best units in the best teammates... You know, he can fit a high spot on the team. And when you consider the teams that are being used, Triku's going to make it up there, and that's why he's number 4. I don't want to spend too much time on Ultimate Gohan because everybody knows who Ultimate Gohan is. He's the anniversary unit that shouldn't have released. Why does this guy exist? The developers still need to give us an explanation while God Goku's not that good. But Ultimate Gohan, right? The purple unit that's put Majin Buu Saga on his back. This guy here has come with endurance, which is unnecessary. Insane healing when you do any big attack, which is unnecessary. He's got hella damage, which is unnecessary. He gets his vanish back, can nullify endurance from his blue card. Ultimate art. It cancels buffs when you do a big attack. I don't know if I said that, so I have to repeat myself. You know, it's really just too much. It's just too much overall. He fits on Son Family, he fits on Majin Buu Saga, and he's so good people leader slot him on other teams such as powerful opponents and even Fusion Warriors. He's a 3 spot, and that's only because 1 and 2, kind of spoiling the list, but you want to hear my explanation more than anything else, are controlling the game. if it wasn't for those meddling kids in 1 and 2, Ultimate Gohan will be controlling the game. And I think out of all the 6th anniversary units, he's definitely going to age the best. That's my take on that. I've been saying it since I made my video on the production of 6th anniversary units and how they're going to age. But ultimately, right now, there are bigger things at stake. And Ultimate Gohan, he's just outside that box unless you're leader slotting him, you know. Majin Buu Saga's Ultimate Gohan's core, Hybrid Saiyans is gone to dust. So the other options are like Powerful Opponent, Regen, you could use Fusion Warriors, GT, and sagas from the movies. Those are the other ones. Then Majin Buu Saga is like in a box of its own, mixing in some of those units such as Kid Buu, Evil Majin Buu's on that team, fusing Super Vegito, you know. I don't think I need to say more about Ultimate Gohan. Everybody pretty much understands he's insane. He's like so individually busted that he can just make the upper echelon of this list. So yeah, let's move on, man. Let's move on. I don't need to talk about him a lot. Right, so we have the 1 and 2 spot, right? And this can be interchangeable. So unlike my other interchangeables, I had Super Baby 2 and Garlic Jr. I openly said that I think Super Baby 2 is better, but they can be interchangeable. With Omega Shenron and Kid Buu, I think Omega Shenron's better than Kid Buu, but I openly said they can be interchangeable. Now at number 1 and 2, you obviously see we have Ultra Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta and Turles. Even though I've placed G4 in front, I don't think one is necessarily better than the other, and it depends on your playstyle in Dragon Ball Legends. This reminds me a lot of the 5th anniversary, right? And depending on how you want to play the game is which unit you will value more. So essentially what I'm asking you to do based on my explanation is pick a side of playstyle, and you will understand why these two are interchangeable with no correct answer. So first I'm going to start with Ultra Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, the best unit in the game. He's the best unit in the game. He's the highest damaging unit in the game. He has a counter which basically forces you to get minimum 4 priorities unless you're rushing him, which you probably aren't because he has good teammates too, such as Omega Shenron, fusing Super Vegito. You could even leader slot him on other teams. He's a good element too, so in most cases he's super safe. He has explosive green, cover no for days. He does pretty much everything you can ask him to do. It's actually absurd and probably the best last stand unit in the game. These are all things you already knew. G4, the most supreme unit that we've probably ever seen, debatably, maybe not. But regardless, he's the best unit in the game, damage wise, threatening wise, counter wise. He does everything you ask him to do. Now, what I need to ask you is, why would he not be the best unit in the game? The only reason you'd have to say is because the whole rest of the game is trying hard to counter him. Imagine being the most powerful force in the game that the whole game has to go against you. And this is why I think it reminds me of the 5th anniversary. We had Universe Rep and Go Frieza. We had Go Frieza being the unit that's spawning all the Universe Rep back up, and their whole intention was to stop UVB, who barely had a surviving team, you know, especially going forward into the festival. The game has intentionally gone out their way to counter G4, and G4 is still a unit that is a force to be reckoned with. If you don't have Triku, G4 basically runs free doing insane damage. If you do have Triku, G4's counter still exists. It still gives you a point where you can literally survive. So a lot of people will opt in to be protected by that counter. You still have to get 4 priorities unless you're rushing him at a minimum. And that ultimately influences everybody's playstyle in the game. If you come up against G4, your mindset is, okay, let's deal with the counters. If you come up against a powerful opponent team with Turles, which I'll speak about in a bit, you're thinking survivability, who am I going to take out first? How long is this game going to go? It's 2 different playstyles that people go about. This does not say G4 isn't countered. What it says is there is counters for G4, but G4 is still surviving, which is why people are still using him. You still play games thinking about him in almost every single game. Probably 7 to 8 games out of 10, you will see G4, and there's a reason for that. Even more so, the game is a 3v3 game. So you could also leader slot him, because everybody's very well aware he's the highest damaging unit in the game. You can leader slot him, and it will work just as effectively on powerful opponents as if you didn't run him on powerful opponents. You know, he's that goated. That's what he was. That's what he is. Even off the boost, people are relying on him for obvious reasons. Now, I'm going around in circles here, but if you can't understand that 4 priorities is not something that you have to work around in the same way of powerful opponent survivability, I would say you're biased. On top of him having more damage output than everybody on this list, you cannot refute that. If you pair these two together, so now I'm going to go into Turles. Turles' addition to powerful opponents and sagas from the movies makes it so that you have to work around 6 lives, maybe 5 lives, right? Minimum 5. That's absurd. Why do I have to kill you 5 times to win the game? Make it 6, you're doing too much. You're doing way too much, right? Turles him here with his comeback. Golden Frieza with the comeback. Triku, he doesn't have survivability, but he's gonna grief G4. Who else is here? Omega Shenron with his indestructible. Kid Buu with his endurance. Garlic Jr. with the most healing in the game and tankiness. Super Baby 2 with the combo break. Even outside, we got Evil Margin Buu. We got Broly. There's all these powerful opponents that are here to stop pretty much one man go against him, you know. But, like I said, it's a 3v3 game. You can literally just run G4 with Turles. So, I don't have much to say about Turles besides the simple fact that also he has comeback, and his comeback basically forces you to switch out once it activates. So what happens? I believe you lose your vanish, you lose your key, and ultimately you have to switch out to survive. If you're 1v1 against Turles and you take out his comeback and he has a rush, right after that you're doomed, you know? Ultimately, it's hard to deal with, but always remember this game is a 3v3 game. So, like I said, what type of playstyle do you want to go for? G4 forces passive play because you have to get 4 priorities, but then the passive players are the guys that are using 6 lives. But then you could also just be a scumbag and use both of those together. Whichever way you go, these two hang at the top, and whatever team you build, it's around one of these guys. Are you going survivability 6 lives, or are you gonna go counter 4 times, 3 times priority 4 times? That's what I meant. So yeah, ultimately I think that's, you're gonna play one or other. You don't necessarily have both. If you do have both, you're eating and you're probably the safest guy in the game right now. And I think that's why these guys are definitely interchangeable. There's no reason to deny that G4 is the most powerful unit in the game, but there's also no reason to deny that survivability has put him in a headlock to the point where he can't run freely. But even though he can't run freely on the defensive end, he's still protected heavily because of his counter. And that's ultimately how I see PvP, which is why I have these two at 1 and 2. Okay, so we have the finished product of the tier list that I made here, and as you can see, there's been quite a few changes and there's quite a few interchangeables. It's quite difficult to do this one. Like I said, it was going to be very tight from the 8th spot going upwards to the 4th spot. I'm going to explain something starting from the bottom. So we moved UGB up to the fan service and I moved Bardock and Goku down. These are just all glazed units. There's no basis on them. They're not contending. They're just here to make it look pretty, and somebody's going to be happy in the comment section. At least God Goku made it to the fan service. Shout out God Goku, man. Anyways, moving on to honorable mentions. Honorable mentions, we decided to move Gogeta Blue up because he has good teams. Even though he's not a first pick on any of those teams, he's still on movies, he's still on Fusion Warriors. So it was a harsh disrespect to move him down to fan service. He is usable, so we're going to keep him up. But as you can see, he's on the lower end of fan service, which makes it hard for him to really shine, you know. I might even say he's better than Broly, not going to lie. We also moved CMZ up here to honorable mentions because the main yellow in the game, Triku, who stops G4 can be also used in Fusion Warriors with CMZ. So he's also making it, but he's on the lower end of honorable mentions. The rest pretty much stays the same, so I'm not going to address it, but if you have any complaints about anything else, you can comment about it. I will say though, some people mentioned Ultra Super Saiyan 2 Gohan in the stream. He is a decent counter to Turles, but I feel like he just doesn't have a good enough team to work him into the rotation. He does have endurance as well, but I just don't think he's good enough individually to mess up a whole team that works better without him to put him on. So if you're just using him, you're using him with the intention of countering this guy, but then you put him at risk against this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy, even though he'll work well with this guy. So that's why he's in honorable mentions and not the top 10. Let's move into the 7 and 8. 9 and 10 is still the same, so I'm not going to talk about it. We have Golden Frieza. He moved down quite a few spots. And the reason we moved down Golden Frieza is because even though his comeback is super valuable, right, because of his other survivability factors, really and truly, if we process this right, Golden Frieza's layer of survivability could just be less valued in the eyes of what's recent right now with Triku existing. You can use him on powerful opponents, but generally speaking, we moved Omega up over him because Omega is basically type neutral all the time, right? All the time. The indestructible is basically the same thing as comeback, right? Basically the same thing, but this guy doesn't see color. So overall, you know, you can counter this guy with the yellows being so valuable, but even the purples all being here, Omega Shenron's basically neutral at all times. Not all times, but it's enough to the point where you can avoid even worrying about him being green. We moved Vegito slightly up, so these two are now interchangeable. And Vegito, his Rising Rush is going to be the biggest reason why he will win a lot of games for people. So if you use Vegito, when I use Vegito anyways, if you use him optimally, you should get at least 2 Rising Rushes every game. Minimum 2. I'm not going to lie. Unless the person forfeits or they just die because their team is poorly built, you should get at least 2 Rising Rushes, especially going up against survivability of the movies. So overall, Vegito moved up for those values, even though he is kind of at bay because there is a lot of lives. And then we moved Kid Buu up for survivability and damage. We moved Omega up because he's neutral and he also has basic survivability, which pairs better with Omega, plus him being more valuable to counter Turles. So I think Omega with Turles, sorry, that's what I meant to say. But he also counters Turles while also Kid Buu, so that's why he's ahead. Even thinking about it right now, I'm looking at it more, and I might even just blatantly keep, you know, I'm not gonna lie to you, chat. I'm even thinking 6-5, you know, like I'm locked in. Because the green is just better than the blue. It's also advantage over it, while this guy's type neutral overall. So I'm also gonna stretch that out a bit. I had it interchangeable a bit, but I think I'm happy with this. And then to end it off, Triku explanation. To elaborate on him just a bit, I gave the analogy to say, you are in the NBA Finals. In the NBA Finals, you need to go up and win against LeBron James, the best player in the game. The best player in the game. This guy, most likely. Going up against LeBron James. Now, Triku on his own would never make a starting 5 on any basketball team, because he's not a basketball player. But in your Legends teams, normally, he wouldn't make your starting 3. That's what I'm trying to say. But because he serves the sole purpose of stopping LeBron James in the NBA Finals, he's not usually a starting 5, but if he does that job so well, he's warranting a raise. And that's why he's made it up to the 4th spot. He can also counter one of the best units in the game, which is Ultimate Gohan. And if you look on the bottom end, there's also a lot more purples, which gives him more value. So, you can't really deny that analogy, because he is the guy that's going to win you that championship in the NBA Finals. So, we got to put that guy there at the high spot. But if you think otherwise and you just keep your regular good starters because this guy only does one job, then cool, he's going to be a lot lower. But for me, I'm keeping him at 4 because he stops literally 2 of the best units in the game and even some others. Someone unironically said Goku would be good at basketball. He probably wouldn't. He could barely drive a car straight, you know. he goes overboard. He probably burst the ball. But yeah, this is my top 10. Let me just scroll down so you can see the fan service as well. And yeah, I think it's pretty nice. I like the list. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section. That's going to be the end of the list. As you can see, I'm now looking kind of messed up and raggedy because the list is causing me trauma. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section about the tier list. This tier list was very hard to do. I'd actually say it was the hardest tier list I've ever had to make. The chat helped me out a lot. We had a lot of conversations going back and forth. A lot of people made some good points. So overall, I think the community, even though I ultimately made the final decision on the tier list. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. If you haven't already, make sure to press that subscribe button. We're on this grind to 100,000 subscribers. I appreciate you guys for watching, man. My name's Zakashi, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one, man.